But first, what a complete and scandalous disaster, the Victorian government. It's locked down Melbourne all over again, and that's because there was a record 191 new infections since yesterday.
These are unsustainably high numbers of new cases. It is simply impossible with case rates at this level to have enough contact tracing staff, to have enough physical resources, no matter where they come from, no matter what uniform they wear, in order to continue to suppress and contain this virus without taking significant steps. If we were to fail to take those steps, then it won't be a couple of hundred cases per day, it will be many more than that, and it will quickly spiral well and truly out of control.
191 new infections today. And the Premier, whose clown show government got us into this disaster, brought back stage 3 shutdowns for 6 weeks, although this time just for Melbourne, plus one rural local government area, Mitchell, to the north of the city.
The public health team have advised me to reimpose stage 3 stay-at-home restrictions, staying at home except for the 4 reasons to leave, effective from midnight tomorrow night for a period of 6 weeks. There is simply no alternative.
Now, until the other day, we had this virus outbreak just about beat, and then suddenly it got out again and caused this havoc. And guess whose fault this all was? It's mine, yours, your neighbours, the bloke down the street. It's not Daniel Andrews' fault at all, not the Premier's. It's yours because you got slack. You got complacent.
I think a sense of complacency has crept into us as we let our frustrations get the better of us. I think that each of us knows someone who has not been following the rules as well as they should have.
Oh, we Victorians were all of us complacent. Oh. No, Premier, you were the complacent one. You complacently let amateurs, not the police, not the army, not prison guards, but private security people, some of whom didn't even turn up, you let them run the security at your quarantine hotels, which is the gate. Keep those gates closed, there would be no infection, no outbreak now. You let them run your quarantine hotels. You complacently did not even insist that returning travellers at those hotels get tested before letting them go home. You complacently did not make sure that the guards who then did get sick got a bit too close to some of these travellers. You complacently let them go home and stay on an honour system in quarantine. You did not make sure that they didn't throw parties or go down the street or let people come into their home. And that is how this virus got out. Unbelievable bungling at the door. And the result, 2 more Victorians dead this week, 9 now in intensive care. So where was the Premier's apology? Where was even just an explanation would do for this disaster? How on earth did this happen? Oh, the government says, oh, well, look, we've called an inquiry, so you're just going to have to wait for your answers until then, you know, months from now, maybe when you've forgotten. No, tell us now. How can we trust you, Premier, if we do not know who in your government stuffed up? And why? Was it you, Premier? So many more people are now going to go broke. The restaurant owners and the staff who just started reopening, all closed again. Community sport, closed. Food courts, closed. Cinemas. I've never seen such a government fiasco. Kevin Rudd's pink bats disaster, a well-oiled machine compared to this. The Ruby Princess, mere hiccup. New South Wales is now sending an army of police and even soldiers to the border to keep Victorians out.
Some 650 police are currently travelling down to the border to commence the operation. The Australian Defence Force has agreed to assist. There'll be some 100 members of Defence on the ground from Thursday, and that will grow to 350 over the weekend.
Have you ever seen anything like this in your life? I mean, I can hear you laughing in Queensland and snickering in South Australia, but really, guys, the rest of Australia will still pay for this. Victoria is a quarter of the Australian economy. The money it loses will be the money all Australians lose. From New South Wales to Western Australia, you're all going to pay. Because this, it's just incredible. Beggars belief. At least this ludicrous government has learned some small lessons from this cock-up. It's learned some small lessons from the last time it cracked down. You know, when it got all hairy-chested, it was the toughest government in Australia. Went right over the top. Well, some of the pointlessly useless restrictions it imposed last time have now been dropped. There's no dumb bans this time on fishing and boating and tennis and golf and surfing, all those things that didn't make a blind bit of difference. So look, we can't have people having fun. The big lesson this time around, even bigger than those, it now sees that it is indeed stupid to lock down a whole state when so much of it has had local government areas with just one sick person in it. They're the ones in orange I've marked there. And so most areas, the red ones, not one single sick person at all. So they, and all but one council outside Melbourne's a council just to the north, don't have to go into this lockdown. So small mercies, they're okay. Even so, again, I ask, is this a total overreaction? The deaths so far from this virus in Victoria, 22. 22. Most flu seasons, it's 10 times that much or more. And nothing gets shut down. No one panics. So are we going to get governments cracking down like this every time there's a surge in infection somewhere in Australia? We've got to be a bit smarter. This virus is going to be with us until a vaccine is found. That could be a year and a half at the earliest, or years if we're lucky, unlucky, maybe never, who knows? And if we keep reacting like this, the damage is going to be unbearable in money and in people's mental health. What a difference all this drama is to back in February when Premier Daniel Andrews, this same bloke, said, don't panic about this virus. In fact, get out this weekend and have a meal. Don't let fear ruin what's great about our state. Now it's letting fear ruin what's great about Victoria. The shutdown, the anger this will cause. You have a look at how some people in some of the 9 Housing Commission towers that Andrews has locked down were arcing up at the police now. Not pretty, not a tribute to multicultural harmony either.
We are here with us, so you're telling me now. It's a difficult situation. It's not difficult. It is. You don't know it is what you know. We don't see the sound.
You didn't touch him, don't touch him.
There's going to be stuff in your building.
But there's nothing in our buildings. Are you f***ing dumb? There's nothing. Everyone's starving, bro.
Right. Why are you going to pepper spray him? He's not a harm to no one. Why are you going to pepper spray him?
Can't wait for Harmony Day to turn around. By the way, 69 of the 3,000 people in those towers, 69 have already tested positive. And here's something else I'd like to understand. How did 90 teachers and students and associated staff or whatever at one private school, just one private school, the Al-Taqwa College, get infected? 90. Why have we had no information about that very major outbreak? I tell you what, if that school was a Catholic one and not Islamic, it would be all over the newspapers. This government would be naming and shaming like it did with one school that had just a single teacher sick. Do you remember that? I feel like we're being played for fools in Victoria by a government that was insanely tough on useless things, but slack on what really counted, and is now blaming the people it so shockingly failed. Joining me is Sky News reporter Patrick Murrell, who was at the Premier's press conference today. Patrick, thanks for staying back for this. I mean, you've had a long day. Was there any apology from the Premier? Any, oh, look, I did this and that was wrong. I'm so sorry.
There was an apology, Andrew, but it was more of a sorry, I'm doing this to you, rather than sorry, we're in this position, sorry, I've caused it. Of course, when the issue of hotel quarantine, of course, genomic testing has shown that a substantial number of Victoria's cases can be linked back to breaches from that. Whenever that issue is brought up, he simply mentions the inquiry and moves along. It's barely ever mentioned in the media conferences. So instead, when he was asked for an apology, it was more, I'm sorry, we're in this position again. And it was almost as if he was pointing the finger at regular Victorians who are ignoring coronavirus restrictions, when, of course, the reason that it's in the community was breaches from the infection control within those quarantine hotels. Here was the Premier apologising in the media conference earlier today.
I am very sorry that we find ourselves in this position. I didn't want to be in this position. No Victorian does. But let's not see this as simply an inconvenience.
I'm very sorry we're in this position too, but I mean, that's not an apology at all. That's just incredible. And so literally, if someone tried to say, well, what went wrong? He just said, oh, we're having an inquiry, you'll have to wait for them.
Yeah, there's no specific reason that's given for why this got out of control, only that people have become relaxed and are not following social distancing restrictions. He wouldn't mention the hotel quarantine by name, really.
That's just... All right. Did he actually admit that the government's running of the quarantine hotels had itself been complacent? He didn't say that at all.
Not in this media conference. Initially, when that inquiry was announced, he did describe it as a failure in operations, but so far we haven't seen anybody really take responsibility for the government with regards to that. Of course, when the Health Minister was asked whether she was perhaps responsible for the managing of contracts, he said, nope, it's not my department, but she wouldn't point the finger at the Department of Jumps, for example. And so we've seen sort of no accountability from ministers or the Premier with regards to the hotel quarantine just yet. It's always, let's wait until what the inquiry has to say.
So we have a government under which a girl who went doing her P-plate test, her driver's licence exercises, practising with her mum in a car, infecting nobody, she got fined $1,600. But this government won't even tell you who stuffed up in the government that the whole state is now under, well, at least the whole Melbourne is now under these stupid lockdowns with so many people going broke. It just beggars belief. This lockdown's going to last 6 weeks, Patrick. Why so long? Because the virus only takes 2 weeks to sort of announce itself. After 2 weeks, you know whether you got it or not.
When asked why it was so long, that 6-week period, the Premier said that this gives multiple rounds of data, if you will. So you have sort of 3 rounds of coronavirus, people getting infected, and then you can see if the figures are coming down from that. That's interesting because previously, as restrictions were eased, it was only that 3 weeks. And so now we have seen that jump to 6 weeks, I guess, because the situation is a lot more tenuous now with community transmission. But there is a chance it could be eased earlier than that if infection does come under control, but there is also the chance that it could be extended beyond that.
Yeah, just quiet with the bad news, Patrick. That was a nice bit to end on. It might be less than that. It might be more. It's not what I wanted to hear. Patrick Murrell, thank you so much indeed for your time.